School Board to order. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Paul, thank you for joining us by phone. Appreciate that. Jim is ill, but everyone else is here. So I would entertain a motion to approve the order of agenda.
Madam President, would you like to remove the SEEK update since Jim is
Good point.
not here?
Order of the agenda with that item removed. Robin.
Linda, I'll move that we approve the agenda as presented with the exception of 8A, the SEEK update.
Second.
Motion and a second, thank you. We also have a Human Resources Board addendum that's at your desk. I assume your motion includes that?
Yes, it can, with the HR addendum. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, sorry about that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I'm excited we have our guest here, Rob, and I know Nancy Jortheim is, I'm assuming, on her way, so you can start this out. Welcome. We have such a wonderful relationship with Fargo Dome, so it's our pleasure to have you as our guest tonight.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and maybe she'll be here.
She's coming. I saw her
All right.
like less than an hour ago, and she said, "I'll
Okay.
see you soon." So,
All right, well,
so
good.
she didn't forget.
We'll just say she's caught up in traffic. Anyways, thank you for the opportunity. Good. It's 5:30, so it's still good afternoon, right? And I appreciate it. Just a brief update on the Fargo Dome. The year we had in 2015 was another busy year. Had just 107 public event days with just over 565,000 people attending those. Another about 98 move-in, move-out days, practice days where there's not really people public in the building. So just over 205 days of activity along with different days. So we're very busy there. Our operating surplus ended very favorably compared to a budget. We were at $318,000 of an operating surplus. Keep in mind that's operating revenues over operating expenses. That doesn't take into account the different depreciation, different things such as that as being city-owned, and compared very favorably to our budget of about $87,000. $310,000 in this era after 2000, with a lot of the other buildings opening up and the new touring industry out there is a very, very good number for us. Does not really rival the numbers in the 1990s when we first opened, but obviously different times at that time. Also with that, direct and secondary economic impact through both patron spending outside, those patrons attending Fargo Dome events, not counting the dollars at the Fargo Dome was approximately $35 million. And Fargo Dome operations, so payrolls and purchasing through direct and secondary of about $14 million brought the economic impact to over $49 million for 2015, which is a good number. I am also one of those who always question any economic impact numbers and the multipliers that come out. The basis we arrive at this is, if you recall, back in 2003 and 4, we did do a substantial economic impact study with CSL out of Minneapolis as well as North Dakota State University, and I believe it was in the neighborhood of 5,000 surveys of patrons at the different types of events, and came up with the numbers to have that. Obviously, we adjust for inflation, but we are also looking either in 2016 or 17 to redo that economic impact to try to get the more up-to-date numbers, if you will, per event. One of the other major things with the Fargo Dome, actually as of January 1st, myself and all my coworkers became employees of the city of Fargo. Prior to that, we were employees of a private management company, Spectra Venue Management, based out of Philadelphia. The city leaders and Fargo Dome Authority throughout 2015 had a lot of discussions and decided that it was time to take a little bit more control or have full control over the employees and the directions. So the transition of the employees was effective as of January 1st. Obviously, with the building operating one way for 23 years and now another way for 6 weeks. There's still items being discussed in the transition, but looking forward to all the opportunities that may be open for further collaboration between all the partners with the city, North Dakota State University, the school district, and the authority as well. Just a little bit about 2016. We're off to a busy start right now. Going to have another great year. Looking forward to the NDSU football season, but a lot of other entertainment activities coming through. One thing you have possibly heard in the media is the upgrades to the video technology in the building. That project is getting ready to be bid. Hopefully will be bid sometime in March with about a $9 million budget to replace all the scoreboards, video boards in the facility, as well as some concourse things. The other things that the Fargo Dome Authority continue to discuss are not only the modernization of the technology, but also, it's hard to say for a building that's 23 years old, but maybe the modernization of the public spaces in that facility. When we were designed in 1988 to 1990, opened in 1992, family restrooms really weren't a thing in our industry, if you will. So we continue to look for ways, without having to build a whole new building, with the funding sources that we have available, to maybe create some additional areas to get better circulation of the patrons and the guests when they're at the Fargo Dome, but also additional regular restroom space, but also family restrooms or mothers' areas and family rooms as well. And so those are the things that have ongoing conversations between the authority and building management and the city over the last 2 years, and we hope to be able to get a plan to get some of that started as soon as possible, as those I think are also needed as much or probably more than the technology side of things. That's about what I've got. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer, or if you want to contact me afterwards, I'm happy to answer those questions as well.
Thank you. Well, as you see, you're relieved that your colleague is here. So Nancy, I would invite you to come up and further fill us in as our official liaison. Thank you, Rob. Don't go away.
What I would say to you is, as you are fiscally responsible for what happens with the Fargo School District, and feel that personally as well as professionally, that's the same thing I walked into here. And is this sense of their staff, and particularly of Rob, of those dollars, although they may be public dollars, are valued as if they were personal dollars, so that they're used appropriately at the right time for the right things to move the community forward. So I think you can feel really good about that as other community representatives. That's a wonderful thing to see that happen again. So I would tell you that about it. I would also tell you that it is like you, in that they don't always agree with one another, but in the end, it is about making the best decisions for that time. So I think those are important things for you to know just in general.
Well, Nancy, I have no idea what you're referring to, but I'll just let that go. Does anyone have any questions of either Rob or Nancy? Yes, Jennifer.
So Rob, you mentioned that in the beginning of January now you're all city employees, and talking a little bit about the partnership. I'm just sort of curious, if I can still call myself somewhat of a newbie, what did that partnership look like before, and how do you envision it differently moving forward?
What it looked like before was the Fargo Dome Authority and the City of Fargo contracted with Spectra Venue Management to manage the facility. So all the employees were employees of Spectra. But I was born and raised in this part of the country. I went to Morehead State University, graduated from there, and myself and many others have worked at the building myself since December of 1992. So Spectra was actually the fourth management company. Essentially what it was is the city or the authority paid a management fee plus some incentive fees based on financial results to manage the facility. The fortunate thing with the Fargo Dome is those who had envisioned it, Goose Johnson and everybody involved with that, put together a very solid funding source. We have a very, I'll use the word mature in that we've been there a long time, management group. We've got very good city leadership and also community organizational buy-in to that facility. Usually with a private management company, people, if it's new and it's a new market that you're trying to break into, you would use a private management company to get the name out more. If the owners of the facility are looking for a significant capital investment in the facility, or if there were financial problems, issues through management. Those are usually the times when a private management company is brought in. Those three criteria aren't at what the Fargo Dome is. We sit with about a $40 million surplus fund that is dedicated to the Fargo Dome to fund capital improvements. We've got a very strong structure in place for city leadership, Fargo Dome Authority leadership, community buy-in, and a very strong base of annual events that really do create a very solid foundation. So going forward, that's yet to be seen. I think some of the city leadership and new city leadership has some ideas that I'm looking forward to working with and being more involved, not only in one 50-acre area of town, but more the city-owned facilities throughout the metro area or throughout the city of Fargo in particular to make sure the dollars that are needed are spent and used wisely.
Rebecca and then Robin.
To build on the city employees, I would like to know what is the number of employees, whether it's part-time and full-time, that are city employees, and then do those employees now, let's see, were additional opportunities opened up to those employees as far as now they're city employees in terms of benefits and that type of a thing, or is that not the case?
We have we're actually adding 2 people. So we have 22 or 23 full-time staff currently at the building. And then we have about 550 part-time staff that are being transitioned over. And in the transition, sometimes paperwork doesn't get filled out. So people, in our business where it's event-driven, some might not come over right away or eventually. So it's about 550 part-time. As far as other opportunities, particularly for the full-time staff, there could be some for certain staff, myself included, as far as different responsibilities that they're looking to possibly have us do, and those conversations are ongoing. And then as we branch out into that, expand the staff as necessary to make sure all the needs are met. We have for a building that size, for the amount of events we do and the type of events we do, we have a very small staff. The Fargo Dome does a huge variety. It's an 18,000 seat football stadium. It's a 115,000 square foot exhibition space. It's a 3,500 seat kind of performing arts center or performance center. And it's an 8,800 seat basketball arena or venue such as that. So a lot of the events we do, we don't do the same events week to week to week. As an example, in the last 8-day stretch, we just finished the North Dakota High School State Wrestling Tournament last weekend in what we can call our basketball set. We flipped over the building into now the Gate City Bank Theater set for tonight's performance. And at 4:30 tomorrow morning, the Home and Garden Show starts moving in as a 120,000 square foot exhibition consumer show. So we are constantly flipping that building over and over and over. So it takes a large human resource to try to make sure all that happens.
Nancy, if you can use a mic, please. Sorry.
One of the things I think Rebecca was asking about was benefit structure, and that was one of the things that this subgroup from the Fargo Dome Authority was really very diligent about, that nobody lost in that process. Some things might be a tish different from working for Spectre versus working for the city of Fargo, but there was no loss. If you lost a little bit here, you gained it here. So overall, the employees were treated absolutely fairly. Wouldn't you say? Yes?
I'll say it's still being worked through.
Well,
Yes, but that is the goal, and that is
goal.
the goal of the conversations. But obviously, what you see on paper doesn't always pan out when you're switching from a 401k program to a North Dakota PERS defined benefit plan and different. Your insurance is based out of Philadelphia or Pennsylvania. Now it's based, back onto a different plan. So there are still some tweaks that we're working through, but I will say that city leadership, city management has been extremely welcoming and open to any of those conversations of, hey, we might need to switch a little bit here or there. And they've been very, very favorable with that.
Because their goal was.
Okay, Robin?
So Nancy, thank you for taking the appointment. I'm sure that you represent Fargo Public Schools very well. I noticed that you voted against the alcohol being served at the football games. Is that kind of a dead issue? Or do we see that coming, or is it maybe too tenuous to bring up?
That to Nancy or me?
Well, Nancy voted against it, and she was, I think she did that.
I don't think it's a dead issue.
Okay.
I think it's an issue that's at a now what do we do? Because part of the issue, certainly in my mind, is a philosophical issue. The other part of it is a pragmatic issue.
Right.
Could you even get it done, and how? So I just don't think it's dead because I don't think either one of those was resolved.
Okay.
Would be my answer.
Nancy used a lot of big words that I'm gonna have to go look up on Google later, but she's very correct on that. There are some ongoing conversations. At some point in time, it also comes down to economics as well. And from a management standpoint, that's where I'm looking at it. I'm neither for nor against at this point in time. My job is to point out the pros and cons of both, and also remind both the Fargo Dome Authority members and city commissioners that they have charged us with operating profitably. And as healthcare costs and benefits continue to rise, as labor costs continue to rise, as energy costs, which I don't need to explain to this board of energy costs in all the buildings, but the Fargo Dome is about $700,000 annually in just energy costs. As those all continue to rise, we need to try to find additional revenue sources to balance that. And so it's a question of, if the philosophy changes, that's one thing. We're still gonna operate responsibly. Facilities such as this aren't always designed or supposed to operate profitably, but should always be operated responsibly. But if it's a profitability question, then it's okay. Well, do we want to have parking at $10 or $15, or ticket convenience fees higher, or soda at $5, or do we offer a product that is legal to certain ages and has parameters and has licensing to a group? And again, I am neither for nor against at this time. I simply point out the pros and cons and let the elected officials or the appointed officials or our tenant, our major tenant, work those decisions out.
John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And initially, I would like to welcome you, Rob. I like this addition to our report, is to have you accompany our representative to the Fargo Dome and to the Dome Authority. It's a great partnership and great communication level for us. And if we could do one more thing, though, I think it's early December, you have an event like the second Tuesday of the month, and we can never go because it's always on a school board night. So I don't want people to think that we're not interested in going your way too. You know, but thank you so much. I hope we can continue. I've seen more Fargo Dome updates, and this isn't a criticism, it's just stepping up our communication, but I've seen more recent Fargo Dome updates than I had in the first several years, so that there's value to that. Lastly is just a kudos to the community and to the people and to you folks and your management. And, you know, I'm from a little town out there, and it's not just like our schools, graduations, and our local schools having sporting events and competitions there, but the way these kids in these small towns see it when they get to go play in the Dome, that's the big time in them. And that's something that just doesn't compare for those small town kids in small Class B schools and so on. So, you know, the role we play in an outreach to the greater population, to the hometowns of many Fargo residents, just thank everybody deserves to be acknowledged for that very important role, plus everything else you do so well.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It is fun to be a part of those events and appreciate the response that those attendees have, and also appreciate your words. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you again for taking the time to come update us. And Nancy, thank you again for serving as our official liaison to the Fargo Dome Authority. We really appreciate that. And keep up the good work. Glad you're busy. I have one odd little question. Just, did Global Spectrum become Spectra, or are they two different groups?
There was, that's a question that a lot of people ask. There was a brand change.
Okay, okay.
And so Global Spectrum became Spectra Venue Management Services. Their food and beverage arm became Spectra Food and Hospitality, and their ticketing side became Spectra Ticketing and Fan Engagement. So it is important to note that we do still have a relationship with Spectra through the food and beverage side, through the ticketing side, and a possible consulting arrangement. So there is still that presence. I just have one of my direct reports removed from somebody I have to make sure I speak with on a regular basis.
And these management companies, they're accustomed to having some of their venues kind of break off and go. I mean, this isn't all that unusual, is it?
I think the way this one happened was a little unusual, but there is no animosity, from what I've been told, between the authority and Spectra. I sure hope there wasn't animosity with the local management staff, otherwise I probably wouldn't still be here. But no, it's one of those, as buildings mature and as they look to branch off in different things, it kind of does come down to an economics decision as well.
Great, thank you. Last call, questions? Okay, thank you so much, appreciate you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Taking the time. This brings us to the FEA report. David Marquardt informed me that they have parent-teacher conferences, so he can't be here, so let's hope great conferences are happening around town. Brock will update us on the Interim Legislative Education Committee.
All right, Madam President, members of the board, last Thursday, the 18th, I traveled to Bismarck and attended the Interim Education Committee meeting. There was basically 3 separate presentations at the committee. We heard from a gentleman who is the Vice President and General Counsel of Crisis Prevention Institute, and there was a fair amount of discussion regarding trends around restraint and seclusion in schools. And there was a request from this group to really talk to the Education Committee about the potential of writing legislation and having laws on the books in North Dakota that pertain specifically to restraint and seclusion in school districts. And was good discussion by a number of parties and good questions. And one of the things that really is at play from a legislative perspective is what is viewed as a lack of data statewide, that it's not something that's regularly collected. And so they want to get some additional information and think about what they would do, if anything, moving forward. We also then had a gentleman who's the executive director of Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium that was there. Really gave an update as to what's going to happen with Smarter Balance moving forward, what some of the issues or concerns that the state saw with the assessment last year, and then some improvements that they're making, and hopes that certainly going forward with assessment models, testing protocols, et cetera, will be better and much improved. And I'm certain that Dr. Agri and Dr. Gross have more information in regards to how that went for our district, but really just a review and upgrades that are coming as we go forward. Then we had the president of ACT Aspire with the group, and really talked about assessment, again, testing models and assessments going forward, and what can be offered in that perspective. That was very brief. And then Kirsten Baszler gave a presentation just about what does the future hold in regards to assessments for K-12 and where that might be heading, and really hopes of what she could see going forward, and making sure that we're assessing the right things the right way, and things of that nature. So really, I think some good information about what could be coming from a legislative perspective. There was nothing at that particular meeting about the funding formula or finance. I know that's one of the things people are concerned about as we head to the next session. What's that going to look like? I think although there may be conversations happening, there's nothing formal at the interim committee about that. But just really some good updates and conversation that they had. I then left before they broke and went on a tour of the new high school in Bismarck, so I did not get to see that, but my neighbors at the lake designed it, so maybe I can get a tour someday. So, yeah, so it was good, and I think good to stay in touch with that group, and certainly making sure we're keeping communications open as we head to the next session.
Thank you. John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brock, if I might just ask a question while it's fresh on our minds. The notion of Common Core, but more locally focused on the Smarter Balance Consortium, and then connecting to the topics of school choice has even become a real major issue in at least one of the campaigns of one of our gubernatorial candidates. Do you have any sense, is there any sense that this is affecting the conversation any differently or not, or will it not only become a legislative, but then maybe, I'm just curious how that's
Members of the
rippling out.
board, John, I do not, and I've not heard any conversations about that. Dr. Schatz or Dr. Gross or Dr. Agri may have heard other things, but I've not heard any conversation about changing that conversation, as you allude to.
If I think I hear you right, you're wondering, is Common Core still an issue? Is it going to be something that becomes a platform along with Smarter Balance and all these other things? It's two different things. Common Core is the standards and the assessment piece with Smarter Balance. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Smarter Balance and to see where the state goes. Now that the ESSA, the old education, now the new one, the law, federal law, has the rules and regulations come forward with that from the federal government, that'll really set the stage for what might happen at a local level, because then that has to come to DPI, and then they have to develop their rules and regulations as to how that's going to impact the local education agencies, so the LEAs.
And if I might continue, another level of discussion there with that candidacy is affecting retirement plans, where they would advocate a shift from defined benefit plans to defined contribution plans. It's just something to have on our sights on as these topics become more vocalized as the debates go on for conventions and primaries and so on.
Thank you, Brock. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, thanks for attending that on our behalf. Brings us to consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve that item.
I move approval of the consent agenda, excuse me, with the HR agenda.
Second.
Actually, to clarify, there's no HR addendum on the consent, or is that?
With the addition of the HR addendum, but was
Oh,
added
okay.
at your.
Oh, gotcha, sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Board reports. Pardon me? Oh, what is, sorry about that. I know, okay, here they are lying there. Just, oh, it's all clear to me now. Thank you, thank you. Yes, so monitoring, thank you everyone who returned your monitoring info, and I think I'm the only one who had a comment. Does anyone have any comments to make in addition at this time? John?
Madam Chair, I'd move we receive and file this monitoring report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Anne Marie, please.
Benson,
Yes.
Goldenberg,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Myers,
Paul, can you unmute your phone?
Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes, thank you. Motion carries. What is being distributed to you is our evaluation information on the second evaluation of the year. And this is based on the ELs and the results policies that we have, that we've monitored to date. Because our calendar shifted a little bit, this might not be exactly the same as this time last year, but this is what you'll be basing your evaluation on. And so we need those back by February 26th. Is that correct?
Correct, yes, thank
Yep.
you.
So this has already been emailed out to you, and this is just a reminder to get those in by Friday. Any questions anyone has on that? Okay. Committee liaison and correspondence reports. John, please.
In that regard at the moment.
Okay, Rebecca?
Okay, I have a few things to report. So last Monday, I was at the Professional Development Day for Clara Barton and Hawthorne. And the teachers were using their time to analyze data regarding, I guess the best way that I can explain it is areas of student performance based on various assessment models that they've used. And so for the morning, I was at Hawthorne, and then the afternoon, I was at Clara Barton. And when I was at Hawthorne, I observed the first grade teachers working as a group. And then at Clara Barton, I observed the fifth grade teachers. So it was just interesting to see how they work. Both groups obviously working together, but there are different needs and so some of the different things that they're talking about. But in the end, what was really great to me, and it wasn't that I didn't think that this wasn't happening, but it's just to, I guess, reaffirm that to the public that our teachers are working, very, very hard, and they appreciate and need these professional development days. They need to be paid for these days. They need to be offered to them to the extent that we do. I think that they'd, at least the ones that I talked to, would prefer to have more opportunities if we could give them to them. And really, I witnessed student by student, or one-on-one student analysis in regard to the assessments. And really, the teachers working as a group to look at the needs of all of our students. From high risk, very, very special needs, to those that are maybe achieving at a higher level that need additional challenges on that side. So it was really interesting to see how the teachers analyze each student and talk about not only where they are, but what are the solutions. And I'm confident that that is happening all across the district. So I was happy to have an opportunity to be there and actually participate in the conversation, which was very nice. The second item is in regard to the calendar committee, and we met yesterday. And we talked mostly about the second half of the school year. And we're trying to figure out how we're going to finish up the end of the year. Memorial Day is, I don't know, we say it's a little later this year, or it seems like we've looked at some different options in regard to, are we going to need to go into June-ish, or are we going to be able to finish up the end of May? But as we all know, it depends on also when we start school. So there aren't a lot of variables, but we're coming back together again on February 29th to talk about that. And then the Communications Committee, the next meeting is March 14th at noon in the boardroom, and we'll continue to look at GP 2E. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Rebecca? Great. Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay, I have two things. I attended the Financial Planning Task Force as an observer last night, and really all I have to say about that is thank you again to administration for putting that team together. I think it's going to be great. We have a great group of folks there. So lots of good information was shared last night. And then secondly, the Health Insurance Committee met this afternoon before our meeting here, and just a couple of highlights. They talked a little bit about the scope of and what is their role, and coming up with basically looking back on how they began, which was 20 plus years ago, and moving forward, what does that look like, and basically coming up with a purpose statement. So that's an ongoing discussion. They put out a survey, a well-used survey. They received a little more, I think 10 or 11% participation rate, which sounds like at least what I gathered from the meeting today, that's a pretty normal response rate from folks. So they discussed some ways in engaging some additional folks to, the survey is still open, still out there, so they talked about that. And then they did get a lot of great feedback from one of the survey questions. What would you like to see offered? And folks offered up some good suggestions. So they spent some time talking about that. So those are my 2 updates. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any questions for her? All right, David.
Nothing at this time, thanks.
Robin.
Governmental Affairs Committee has not met, but based on the Brock's report, doesn't sound like there's not a lot to meet about, so we need to visit about when we want to engage our upcoming legislators. Those seats are starting to settle in, and I've met with a handful more over the last couple of weeks, and so things are pretty firmed up on both sides, so we'll need to determine if we want to meet prior to the primary or after the primary. Other than that, that is all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Robin? Okay, Dinah?
I attended the FPS Foundation board meeting last week. I've already told you about I think Linda has it on her reminder, the spring alumni event, which is April 25th or 6th, what is it, the Tuesday? So there'll be a lot more of that going out in emails, and hopefully you guys can all put it on your calendar and attend. And there's talk about future events and so on, and I just thought you'd be interested to know also that the fall event that has been more of a meet and greet awareness type of event, they're looking at having that out at Blue Stem this year. So using some of our facilities and so on. So there's that in the planning. And the February innovation grants are in the process now. I gather that's quite an extensive process to review all the grants, and they're very excited because with every year there are more and more teachers who are applying for these grants and who are understanding the value of them, and it's getting harder and harder because they don't have an endless supply of money, and the quality of the applications has gotten really impressive. So that was kind of nice to hear too. And I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Dinah? So I don't have much to report other than the dates coming up, and the date that Dinah mentioned is on there, April 26th. And just a reminder again of your homework assignment. I was out of town for much of the time since we last met in person, so I was not out and about to speak of. And in my report, I've included the dates of the upcoming task force meetings that you're invited to attend as an observer. And at this point, I'd ask Dr. Schatz to kind of fill us in on his take on how things went at the first one.
Thank you. As you know, last night we met for the first time, and I was very pleased with the group that we've assembled. We have 39 people on that group, and I provided for you at your place tonight the list of the folks, and so you get a sense of the makeup of the committee. Brock and I spent the entire night uploading information, if you will, for folks, and so it was kind of a team effort, and we did our song and dance the best we could. If I had to give a quiz to the folks that were there last night, I think they would have been a little bit nervous because the information is heavy, but I think the good news is that we're educating a lot of people about how school districts are financed and what are all those intricacies when it comes to mill levies and federal funds and all the different things that go on. So last night was all about that. Moving forward, the next time we meet, we'll continue to do a little bit more of that. We didn't get through everything, and then Bob is still working on the curriculum assessment or the curriculum review, looking at our curriculum as compared to a couple of other districts. We're anticipating we'll have a report for that, and so we'll send that out ahead of time and then review that at the next task force. And that'll also become an addendum to what you've already seen with some of the other standard of effort types of reports, so board members will see that too. And then once we get to that point, we will start discussions, and have told them to start writing down questions that they have, thoughts that they have, and really the first thing I'm going to be asking them is, what are your aha moments? What is it you're taking away when you look at the overall effort that we put forward to educate students in this district. And then from there, we'll gather those comments and thoughts and then start to develop the additional types of questions that we'll want to ask them to get feedback. And so ultimately what we're hoping here is that we get feedback from that group to provide you as board members feedback with what a larger group, when they take a look at our standard of effort, what do they think about that? And then hopefully that'll help you as you move forward thinking about what type of effort do we want to put forward as a district? And whatever that is, then what kind of financial commitment do we need to have to be able to do that? And so I'm pretty excited about it. And as I looked out over the group, I look, it's amazing to me how when we put these things together, you look out and you go like, you know what, I think we have the right people. And they were very engaged last night, did their homework coming in. And the other part is we have those 5 students, those 5 high school students. And so I went up and asked them how they're doing. And boy, they rolled up their sleeves, they were working and learning, and I think it's going to be a great experience for those young people. So that's where we're at. We're excited about where we're at, and I think when it's all said and done, you'll be pleased with the information that you'll be able to have back with regard to those feedback loops and the decisions that the board will have to make moving forward. So,
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Schatz?
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Schatz and Brock and everyone else that has been involved with just getting this going. And there last night, I was also there last night, just observing, but everyone does have the opportunity to learn this information, but of course, in different ways, and not everyone has the same amount of time and the same commitment, but these folks do. And there was, like you said, there was a ton of information given to them, but they were engaged, they were asking questions, people are thinking, and they care. And there's no doubt in my mind that when they left, when the individuals left the room, I'm sure there were a bunch of aha moments. And they already have a greater, even if they don't show up for the rest of the meetings, which I know they will, they have a higher level of understanding in terms of what goes on in this district and what we offer and our budgeting process and everything. So thank you so much, and to the people that are going to be participating ongoing, because it's going to be very valuable to the community.
Thank you. Did you say you had something to add?
I had one additional report, and I just wanted to share this because, and it has nothing to do with this, so we're changing here a little bit.
Before you do that, does anybody else have any questions? Go ahead,
Yep.
Robin.
Okay.
We have the dates of the meetings. What times did they start?
Meetings start at 6, they end at 8.
Anyone else have any questions about the task force process? Great, thanks. Moving on.
Today I had the opportunity to go out, and as you know, I like to get out in the schools, and I've been doing that quite often. Last week I was out teaching in some classes, and this week, today I went out and visited classrooms in 3 different schools. But I have to mention one, because I have to tell you, all the years that I've been walking into classrooms, this was the best classroom instructional environment that I've ever walked into. And so Jessica would probably be embarrassed that I mentioned her name, but she's at CBE. She's a 6th grade English language arts teacher, Jessica Magnuson. And she's been trained in techniques by Stephen Dunn to teach students how to really look at the pedagogical approach to teaching students, with student engagement being the center focus of it, but also formative assessment and the use of data to also differentiate the instruction for students. And what I saw today was absolutely spectacular. And so I just wanted to mention that. And what it does is it confirms for me the standard of effort that we put into, sometimes when we bring consultants in and we bring other people to work with our teachers to provide this type of training. According to what Mr. Larson told me, Mr. Dunn, who does this all over the United States, said that she has taken this on to the level of what he has not seen anywhere else in the United States where he's trained. And this is also being replicated across all 3 grade levels at CBE. And so my question was, why are we not doing this at all 3 of our middle schools? And so we will be looking at that. And I tell you, the kids were so engaged, and the learning that was going on of writing skills and all those types of things, 21st century skills included, was spectacular. So I had to mention that. So
That's fantastic. Robin?
I believe she teaches my daughter. Was she also on Wheel of Fortune recently?
I'm not sure. However, I know
That was a different teacher?
when I was leaving
Was she
class, I went up to her and I said,
blonde?
No, no.
No, okay.
Yeah,
There,
when I went up to her at the end of the class, I said, where were you when I was in junior high?
I will tell you, when I went in for conferences, they had the big screen on in the big auditorium there, and they were watching Wheel of Fortune, and I thought, what's going on? And one of our married couple's teachers were on Wheel of Fortune and took home a good kitty. So, yeah, to verify the name of that teacher.
And just one final comment, I was in 7 different classrooms today, and I saw great things across the board. And what I was really encouraged by is I was in 2 classrooms, a first-year teacher, a second-year teacher, and the level of confidence that they had, the level of engagement they had with their students was refreshing to see, that we have really good young teacher candidates that are coming out and stepping into the classroom and doing a great job. So from experienced teachers that I saw today to those first and second-year teachers, it was just reaffirming that we're doing a good job of hiring people. We're getting them in. The mentoring program is working because these young folks are getting mentored, and that way they can come in and really take off, and into that second year just kind of explode into that growth model that we want to see with young teachers. Usually we say it takes 3 to 5 years to really get acclimated to the classroom and really excel, and I'm seeing first and second year teachers who are in the third and fourth and fifth year of what we would expect in experience and just composure and confidence and those types of things. So it was just really reaffirming, and had to mention it because, I mean, this is what we're about and this is what we do, and it was great to see.
Well, that's inspiring. Thank you. And kudos to Dr. Gross and all the folks that you work with, and Dr. Augrey and all the folks that you work with out in the schools. Anybody have any comments about that? Any other reports? Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'd be remiss not to sing happy birthday, but you don't want me singing it to Dr. Agri today. And it's just a real pleasure to work with you. And I know we all have the highest regard for you, and happy birthday to you. And while we're at it, if anybody runs into Laura Carley, the 26th, if you see her, say happy birthday from her old peers and colleagues, and Rusty Popacek on the 28th. And Madam Chair, if I might just continue with something else. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, after our board meeting, when we were all going home, a tragic situation unfolded in Fargo, where a family, a mom and a child, were at severe risk, called for law enforcement help, and it just turned out to be tragic beyond words that we had an officer down, Officer Jason Moser, and we all work so closely with law enforcement in every regard, and even the school system so especially so. And I just know that we all know there's been a pall over our city. The last while we have a city and a community grieving, and the whole nation's grieving with us, and it's not just the officer, which is so significant. It's the family as well that called for help. And then we see this in the schools, where we have kids who go home to situations like that or have trouble at home. And I just would be remiss not to acknowledge that that's happened in our community right after our last board meeting two Tuesday nights ago. And it will continue. And it'll continue in our hearts, and it'll continue in our practices and our policies and our provision of services to students and their families, and understanding what they're going through, and all that. So and I know I saw one of our SROs, and I just, all I could think of was could have been anybody.
Thank
So
you.
just to share that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, John. I'd just like to follow up by thanking Dr. Schatz and the way that the whole district staff handled that extraordinary fallout from that event, and the shifting of students to the schools and deploying the counselors. And I mean, it's just such a well-oiled machine that when the unexpected happens, you handle it so calmly and professionally. And I thank you on behalf of our staff and our kids. So good work. Anything else? We will meet on March 8th, and we are adjourned. Thank you.